Chapter 1. Qian Guiqian Country. Yanqing Salt City Songwen held up 2 dead steamed buns he had dug out from a slop bucket. Overjoyed perhaps because the buns were too dense or because there wasn't much soup in the slop bucket. The buns hadn't soaked through, remaining relatively clean without too many stains. He scraped off the 2 pieces of vegetable leaves stuck to the buns, completely ignoring the foul smell emanating from the slop bucket beside him, and stuffed the buns into his mouth in big bites. The cold and dry buns, without any water to accompany them, were extremely difficult to swallow. But Songwen couldn't care less. After a few mouthfuls, he managed to shove one bun down his throat with the dry buns sticking in his throat, making it hard to swallow. He almost choked, finally managing to swallow the bun. He felt a slight relief in his empty stomach, but he still felt far from full. He had crossed into this world 2 days ago, and this was the first meal he had eaten. As he regained his senses, he saw a 10-year-old beggar boy appearing before him. The beggar boy was staring pitifully at the remaining bun in Songwen's hand. His eyes filled with longing and hope. Songwen looked at the frail beggar boy in front of him, and then at the bun in his hand. After a brief moment of hesitation and conflict, he brought the bun to his own mouth without intending to give it to the beggar boy. Having crossed into this world resembling ancient times, he found that the skills and knowledge he had from modern society were useless here, and even surviving had become exceedingly difficult. He had no intention of pitying strangers he didn't know. Just as the bun was about to enter Songwen's mouth, the beggar boy's face suddenly turned fierce. The beggar boy suddenly ran a few steps forward, then leaped suddenly, jumping about 2 meters high, and grabbed directly for the bun in Songwen's hand. At the same time, the beggar boy opened his dirty mouth, showing his yellow teeth, and bit down on Songwen's forearm. Surprised by the beggar boy's sudden attack, Songwen initially showed a trace of panic in his eyes, but then he became furious. He had been living well in modern society, not exactly successful, but without worries about food and drink. Now, suddenly transmigrated to this world with almost no survival skills, he was already frustrated, and now even a half-sized beggar dared to bully him. His anger finally found an outlet. Songwen's expression turned fierce. Scram! Swinging his arm, Songwen struck toward the beggar boy. When Songwen crossed into this world, his originally 30-year-old body appeared as a 14 or 15-year-old. Not particularly tall, but still stronger and more robust than the beggar boy who had been lacking food for a long time. Songwen's forearm struck directly on the beggar boy's face, causing him to immediately bleed from his nose. But Songwen clearly underestimated the beggar boy's fierceness. Instead of being knocked back by Songwen's forearm, the beggar boy seized Songwen's arm and bit down on it. During this entire confrontation, the beggar boy's fierce expression did not change at all. His eyes remained fixed on the bun in Songwen's hand. Feeling pain, Songwen's face became even more fierce. You little beast! How dare you bite me? I'll kill you. Songwen lifted his knee, exerting all his strength, and fiercely pushed it against the beggar boy's chest. The beggar boy suffered a heavy blow. His body went limp, unable to hold onto Songwen's forearm anymore, and he flew backward, crashing onto the dirty ground. Half a zhang away. Note: 1 zhang is equivalent to 3.333 meters or 10.9 feet. With his anger still raging, Songwen had no intention of letting the beggar boy go. He walked up and kicked the beggar boy's chest with 2 feet, sending him flying once again, causing him to cough up blood, clearly suffering internal injuries, before finally stopping. Just as Songwen was about to turn and leave, he suddenly noticed that the beggar boy was glaring at him with resentment. The beggar boy's gaze sent chills down his spine, a bad feeling creeping into his heart. Having just arrived and lacking any real power or background, it would be wise not to offend anyone, even a beggar at the lowest rung of society. Who knows if this beggar boy has any local underworld protection behind him? Staring at each other for a long time, Songwen's thoughts of permanently eliminating future troubles flashed through his mind. They were in a narrow and dark alley where few people usually came. Now that there were only the 2 of them here, Songwen believed that if he made up his mind to ruthlessly kill the beggar boy, no one would notice for a while. In this lawless and bleak parallel world's Yanqing, countless common people die unjustly every day. The authorities simply ignore it, unable or unwilling to intervene. From the corner of his eye, Songwen noticed a large cobblestone in the alley, smooth on the surface and hard in texture, likely harder than the beggar boy's head. The hardships of the past 2 days surged up within him in that moment. A towering resentment erupted in his heart, clouding Song Wen's judgment and shattering the ethical standards of the modern society he had known for over 30 years. Song Wen's face turned grim and terrifying, having witnessed much pillaging and plundering in the past 2 days. Song Wen at this moment seemed to awaken the demon hidden deep within his heart, while others behaved recklessly. This was a world where the strong preyed upon the weak. So why should he adhere to the moral and ethical standards of his former life? Song Wen turned towards the cobblestone, the beggar boy's eyes gradually filled with fear. Suddenly, 2 servants from wealthy households appeared at the end of the alley, carrying a slop bucket, and walked in. Seeing outsiders, Song Wen regained his clouded judgment. The demon within his heart retreated, and his reckless thoughts were restrained. There were things that couldn't be done. Song Wen was somewhat relieved and somewhat inexplicably pleased. Shaking his head, he turned and left the alley. Just as Song Wen stepped out of the alley, he saw a large crowd of people rushing towards the street. These people were shouting, "Hurry up, Tian Sha Gang is recruiting. If you're late, there won't be another chance." The reputation of Tian Sha Gang had practically entered Song Wen's ears like a broken record in the past 2 days. In Yanqing, Tian Sha Gang was undoubtedly the top gang force, with some aspects of their power even surpassing the local authorities. However, Tian Sha Gang's reputation wasn't clean, having committed many evils. Song Wen also followed the crowd, rushing towards the street. Job recruitment meant wages, and wages meant being able to eat proper meals, no longer needing to fight over scraps in the slop bucket with beggars. He pushed through the dense crowd with all his might, finally seeing a notice posted on the wall at the street corner. The characters on the notice were similar to traditional characters from his previous life. Although Song Wen hadn't learned traditional characters, he could still understand the general meaning. The content of the notice was that Tian Sha Gang was recruiting children aged 7 to 14 to learn martial arts and become the backbone of the gang in the future. It also mentioned that the families of selected children would receive generous rewards and the children themselves would have a bright future, and so on. After reading the notice, Song Wen felt somewhat disappointed. It turned out that Tian Sha Gang was recruiting new gang members. It wasn't just simple job recruitment. Moreover, Tian Sha Gang only recruited children aged 7 to 14, which didn't fit Song Wen's current body's age. Song Wen squeezed through the crowd and wanted to leave. However, amidst the noisy crowd, a loud shout suddenly rang out. "Hey, you there, hold on." Song Wen heard the shout, but he didn't think it was directed at him. He didn't stop his steps and continued pushing through the crowd. "Hey, kid, I'm talking to you. Are my words no longer valid in Yanqing?" The voice behind him grew increasingly annoyed. As a newcomer, Song Wen was cautious and afraid of offending anyone. He stopped, turned back, and looked behind to confirm if the person was addressing him. Turning his head, he saw a man with a bushy beard, dressed like a rogue. He had a menacing look in his eyes, and behind him stood 2 burly men, all wearing Tian Sha Gang attire. Song Wen immediately furrowed his brows. He didn't understand where he had offended this sir. Originally just an ordinary salesperson at Blue Star, Song Wen's multiple sales experiences hadn't made him rich and wealthy. However, they had taught him to adapt his speech to the listener and to recognize people's underlying intentions. A servile smile immediately appeared on his face. He took a couple of quick steps forward, bowing low, and approached the sir. Smiling obsequiously, he said, "Sir, you called for me. What can I do for you?" Although Song Wen wasn't pleased with his actions, he knew deep down that in this lawless world, if he wanted to survive, he had to bow and bend at first. Offending local bigwigs as soon as he arrived was either challenging a dragon in its lair or seeking a dead end. End of the chapter. Chapter 2. Go Hang was quite satisfied with Song Wen's humble attitude. The anger on his face dissipated instantly. After sizing up Song Wen, he asked, "Do you know how to read?" He had observed clearly that after Song Wen pushed through the crowd and carefully read the notice, he left disappointed at that time. No one explained the content of the notice. From Song Wen's series of reactions, it wasn't difficult to deduce that he could read. Upon hearing this, Song Wen was momentarily stunned. He hadn't expected to be noticed because of this matter. Countless thoughts flashed through his mind in an instant, weighing the pros and cons, deciding how to respond. After careful consideration, Song Wen decided to answer truthfully. This Sir Go had sharp observation skills. He wasn't someone easily deceived. Once the decision was made, Song Wen bent even lower, his face displaying an even more obsequious smile. Replying to Sir Go, "I attended a private school for a few years when I was young and know some characters. Song-won remained composed and calm. Lies came naturally to him, and outsiders wouldn't detect anything unusual. Go-hang nodded. He was very satisfied with Song-won's attitude and response. The admiration in Go-hang's eyes was evident. Those scholars he had encountered before always liked to act superior, unable to afford meals. They showed little interest in his recruitment efforts, simply because he was just a low-level leader of Tiansha gang today. Finally encountering a scholar who understood the ways of the world and treated him so well, even in such a public place, filled Go-hang with great satisfaction in his inner vanity. Go-hang raised his head, maintaining his proud demeanor. "How old are you this year?" 16. To avoid being underestimated, Song-won intentionally reported his age, a bit older according to his physical condition. "What is your name?" Song-won. Go-hang nodded and continued to inquire. "How do you make a living?" "I write letters for people and earn a meager income to get by." Song-won continued to fabricate. Then, Go-hang asked about Song-won's family situation. Song-won described himself as having fallen family fortunes, deceased parents, and no other relatives. "In the future, follow me, Sir Go, and with my recommendation, you can smoothly join Tiansha gang, earning a monthly salary of 1 or 2 silver coins." It had to be said that in Qiangua, where literacy levels were extremely low, scholars were still treated fairly well. In today's Qiangua, 1 or 2 silver coins were enough for a family's monthly expenses. A look of hesitation appeared on Song-won's face. Instinctively, he resisted the sudden kindness of a stranger. Go-hang didn't look like a good person at first glance. Could he really be as good as he claimed? "What's wrong? You look down on my Tiansha gang." Go-hang's displeased voice rang out. A false smile appeared on Song-won's face, explaining with a smile. "Sir Go, you misunderstood. I'm just inexperienced and no few characters, afraid of causing you trouble." "If I, this master, am not afraid, what are you afraid of? You brat, don't know how to appreciate kindness." Seeing a hint of threat in the other's tone, Song-won had no choice but to go along. He immediately wore a grateful smile and replied, "Thank you for your support, Sir Go. I will certainly look up to you in the future and do whatever you instruct." Song-won's eyes were filled with profound gratitude, as if he had encountered his foster parents again. The heat and admiration in his eyes made Go-hang feel rather pleased. It had been a long time since he had experienced such respect from someone. Go-hang reached into the bosom of his follower behind him and pulled out half a pancake. "You look like you haven't eaten properly in a while. Here's half of the pancake I didn't finish this morning. Take it." "Thank you for your reward, Sir Go." Song-won took the pancake and wolfed it down hungrily. The reason for this was twofold. Firstly, he was indeed very hungry now, and secondly, he wanted to continue satisfying Go-hang's vanity as he ate. He silently calculated in his mind. It seemed that the treatment of Tiansha gang members wasn't as good as he had imagined, or else Go-hang wouldn't be keeping half a pancake out of reluctance to discard it. However, upon careful consideration, if what Go-hang said is true, joining Tiansha gang wouldn't be a loss for me. Tiansha gang is the largest underground force in Yancheng. Joining them as a literate scholar, I don't think they would make me engage in violence. There should be some security for my life, and at the same time it can solve my problem of livelihood. For my current situation, it's already the best choice. I owe all of this to the Sir Go before me. Although this Sir Go doesn't seem very bright, he has indeed solved my most urgent survival problem. Go-hang came to the street to post and announce Tiansha gang's recruitment of children. He loudly announced the contents of the notice. Of course, he couldn't read, but someone had informed him of the contents beforehand. After passing through the tight defenses of many Tiansha gang disciples, they entered the headquarters of Tiansha gang. Tiansha gang occupied a vast area. Under Go-hang's lead, after twisting and turning, they arrived at a row of houses. After entering one of the houses, Go-hang respectfully said to an old man, "Elder Yen, I found a new recruit, a literate scholar." Elder Yen was over 50 years old, and in these turbulent times of shortages and medical scarcity, he was already considered elderly. He peered at Song-won with his cloudy eyes, then tossed a small book to him. In a tone that brooked no disagreement, he said, "Read aloud the contents of this book." Song-won took the book, knowing this was his test. This is like an ancient interview for recruitment. Song-won thought to himself slyly. He opened the small book and read aloud. "The universe is mysterious and yellow. The cosmos is vast. The sun and moon rise and set. The constellations fill the sky. Cold winters come and hot summers go. Autumn harvests and winter storages. That's enough, you can stop. Elder Yen didn't let Songwen finish reading, after about 100 characters. He interrupted Song when Elder Yen turned to go hang and said, "Your lucky Elder Ji-in recently recruited another batch of literate young people. And this kid is just right." Go Hang rubbed his hands and awkwardly chuckled. "Elder Yen, I heard that Elder Ji-in rewards scholars with money. What do you think?" Elder Yen smiled. "Your information is quite accurate. I thought it was your good luck. But it seems you came prepared. Go to the accounting room and collect 10 taels as a reward." "Thank you, Elder Yen." Go Hang bowed deeply. Smiling apologetically, Song-won, who was watching from the side, felt somewhat bewildered. What's going on? Why recruit scholars and give 10 taels of silver for them? In Yenching, 10 taels of silver could buy 2 attractive young girls. He had a bad feeling. It seemed like he had been sold previously. He was somewhat proud. Thinking he had manipulated Go Hang in circles, turns out he was the fool. Watching Go Hang leave, Song-wen's last glimmer of hope called out, "Sir Go, aren't you going to treat me well?" Go Hang disdainfully glanced at Song-won. His eyes filled with indifference and mockery. Then, without a word, he turned and quickly disappeared. "He's just a little thug. How could he treat you well? Go to Elder Ji-in. No one can beg their way in there. That's an opportunity. Don't be ungrateful." Elder Yan's icy voice sounded behind Song-won. "Bring this kid to Elder Ji-in." 2 powerful men with martial prowess walked in from outside. Around their waists hung 3-foot-long steel swords. Clang. Half of the steel sword was drawn out, its bright blade emitting a chilling light that hurt Song-wen's eyes. "Kid, I advise you to behave yourself and not act rashly," one of the men said coldly. Song-wen was filled with anger and unwillingness. Elder Yan's talk of opportunity was nothing but a lie. If this was really the coveted opportunity everyone admired, would they resort to kidnapping and forced recruitment? However, faced with the chilling steel sword, he could only reluctantly accept reality. The weak must submit to the whims of others. But as he followed the 2 strong men out, his fists clenched tightly, bones creaking. End of the chapter. Chapter 3. After walking for a full quarter of an hour, the 3 finally arrived at a secluded corner of Tian Sha Gang. Here, facing the mountain, stood an independent courtyard. Around the courtyard were guards armed with steel swords and crossbows. These guards had cold faces and imposing figures, exuding an invisible pressure. Upon entering the courtyard, they saw rows of cottages. Behind the cottages, at the foot of the mountain, stood a 2-story building. The surroundings of the building were developed into neatly arranged fields where unknown herbs were planted. A burly man pointed at the cottages and ordered in a commanding tone, "Pick any empty room to stay in. Meals will be delivered 3 times a day until someone calls for you. You are not allowed to leave the cottage." With these words, the burly man stared coldly at Song-won, urging him to quickly choose a room. Song-won casually selected an empty room and walked in. Inside the room, there was a set of table and chairs, a bed with bedding, and a teapot on the table. Apart from these, there was nothing else in the room. After inspecting the room, Song-won turned and closed the door. As he closed the door, he glanced outside to observe the situation. The 2 burly men had already left the courtyard. Outside the courtyard, heavy guards were stationed. They didn't seem worried that Song-won might do something out of line. After closing the door, Song-won's expression turned fierce and angry. Just now, he had suppressed the anger in his heart. The dominance and tyranny of Tian Sha Gang filled him with frustration and resentment. At this moment, Song-won's heart was filled with a strong desire for power. Yesterday, while begging for food outside the tea house, he overheard discussions among diners, mentioning martial artists capable of walking on rooftops and walls in this world. He now yearned to be a powerful martial artist who could annihilate the entire Tian Sha Gang. Song-won was confined to the room and remained there for 7 days. During the first 2 days, he was filled with resentment towards Tian Sha Gang. Feeling like a fish on the chopping block, completely unable to resist, was truly awful. However, thankfully, food was delivered punctually 3 times a day, and the meals were decent, with vegetables and meat. After getting through the first 2 days, Song-won gradually calmed down. By the last 2 days, Song-won had figured it out. Being confined to the room and forbidden to go out was probably intentional by Tian Sha Gang. It was meant to suppress their rebellious emotions and make them face reality. On the 8th day, Song-won finally heard someone shouting outside the door, "Everyone, come out of your rooms immediately. Those who delay will be severely punished." Immediately after, there was a series of doors opening around. Songwon also opened his door and walked out. Upon looking around the courtyard in front of the cottages, he saw scattered groups of about a dozen teenagers aged around 15. There were also more than 10 Tian Sha gang members standing in the distance with swords. These teenagers gathered in small groups, clearly coerced like Song when many of them murmured quietly about their grievances. These teenagers were all locals of Yenching. They knew the strength of Tian Sha gang. Although they were filled with anger and unwillingness, they could only point and whisper grievances to the guards, daring to be angry but not to speak. Among them was a well-dressed chubby boy, standing out among the mostly poor and skinny teenagers. The chubby boy roared angrily, "How dare you, Tian Sha gang, dare to kidnap me, Zhang Er? My father is the county magistrate of Qingyun County. You better send me back." His voice was loud, attracting the attention of everyone present. Songwen's gaze was also drawn to the chubby boy. Qingyun County was a subordinate county under Yenching, only about 100 miles away, in Shen Country. The authority of a county magistrate was considerable. Songwen was curious about how Tian Sha gang would handle this chubby boy, whether the chubby boy was a fool from a landlord's family who couldn't see reality or Tian Sha gang had mistakenly kicked an iron plate. The guards hesitated upon hearing this but remained unmoved. Evidently, this wasn't the first time the chubby boy had mentioned his identity to them. However, the guards also found dealing with the chubby boy somewhat tricky. Just then, a figure emerged from behind the guards. The newcomer appeared to be around 40 years old, thin and with a triangular beard on his chins. Seeing the chubby boy roaring in the courtyard, the man with the triangular beard looked impatient. He raised his hand, holding a yellow talisman between his fingers, and lightly exhaled. "Go!" The talisman in his hand suddenly turned into ashes, forming a fireball the size of a human head out of thin air. The fireball emitted terrifyingly high temperatures, causing the surrounding space to distort with a roaring wind. The fireball, accompanied by a wild and unrestrained howl, struck in front of the chubby boy in an instant. The chubby boy, seeing the fireball suddenly appear before him, filled with fear, just as he was about to think of escaping, the fireball struck his chest. The chubby boy's fat body was instantly hit hard, sending him flying into the air. "Ah!" Amidst the chubby boy's screams of agony, the scorching flames quickly engulfed his entire body before his body could hit the ground. He turned into a human torch, the crackling sound of burning fat echoed, and soon, the area was filled with the foul odor of burning flesh. In just a dozen breaths, what was once a living person had turned into ashes, not even bones remaining. Everyone was stunned by the sudden turn of events. More than a dozen young people looked at the human torch in horror, their faces pale and silent. Songwon, experiencing his second life after living as a normal person, was equally shocked by the scene before him. He was both terrified by the audacity of Tian Sha gang, publicly executing the son of the county magistrate, clearly not placing the Qiangua court and the more than a dozen young people in front of him in their eyes. He was also fearful of the methods of the bearded man. He summoned a fireball using a yellow talisman. This didn't look like the methods of a martial artist at all. It resembled the abilities of immortal cultivators from legends in his past life. Could this world be a world of immortal cultivation? Just as Songwon was filled with doubts and fears, one of the young men in the scene explained to him, "He is an immortal." A plain-dressed man with several patches suddenly knelt down, his expression both frightened and filled with longing. The young man's exclamation instantly awakened everyone. More and more young people knelt down, bowing to the immortal. The mysterious and ruthless methods of the immortal instantly dispelled the rebellious thoughts in the hearts of most young people. Following the reactions of the majority, Songwon also knelt down. His heart surged with turbulent waves. This was true power, stronger than those wandering martial heroes who just roamed around. Someday, I will definitely possess this kind of power, having suffered injustice for days. Songwen's eyes were filled with determination. This kind of immortal power would surely make him one of the strongest in this world. No longer manipulated and bullied, not only were the young people shocked by the immortal technique of bearded man, but even the guards of Tian Sha gang showed deep fear in their eyes. Seeing this scene, the bearded man curled a satisfied smile on his lips. The effect of killing a chicken to warn the monkeys had achieved his expectations. His gaze swept over the Kneeling young people with a dominating aura of being in control of everything, I am a cultivator of immortal Tao known as Ji-in. I practice orthodox Taoist methods. You have no need to fear. Gathering you all here is to bestow upon you a great opportunity, a chance to seek longevity and become immortal. For the next month, I will personally impart to you the cultivation technique, longevity technique. Anyone who successfully draws in Qi within this month will become my direct disciple. I hope you will cherish this opportunity for cultivation. Even if you cannot achieve longevity, you will gain immense power, wealth, and glory easily accessible. As Ji Yin's words fell, it sparked a fervent response from the young people. Everyone looked at Ji Yin with hot eyes, full of expectation and longing. Songwon was also quite excited. He hadn't expected to gain such an opportunity for cultivation so easily. However, at the same time, he harbored a sense of caution. Ji Yin's methods of seducing people's hearts were indeed formidable. First, he intimidated everyone with thunderous means, and then he offered them an opportunity for immortal cultivation. This was a classic strategy of stick and carrot. Thus, in the process of cultivating the longevity technique, the young people present would undoubtedly spare no effort and do their best. Things are probably not as simple as Ji Yin said. How could someone give away an opportunity for immortal cultivation without any ulterior motives? Ji Yin must have some kind of plan. This opportunity for cultivation is probably not that easy to obtain. End of the chapter. Chapter 4. Sit upright, calm your mind, relax naturally, close your lips lightly, breathe evenly through your nose, clench your hands, eyes straight ahead, concentrate your spiritual radiance reaching towards the heart of heaven. Ji Yin began explaining the first layer of the cultivation technique, longevity technique, focusing on the practice of gathering qi. Ji Yin taught with extreme care, almost explaining word by word. He interspersed many personal insights and experiences into his teachings. The young people listened attentively. They all believed this was their chance to leap through the Dragon Gate and were determined to seize it. These young people were all literate, belonging to the minority in Qian were enlightened. Under Ji Yin's explanations, they could mostly comprehend the essence of the technique. Some impatient individuals had already seated themselves cross-legged, their minds turned towards the heavens, eyes tightly shut. They listened to Ji Yin's explanations while attempting to sense the presence of the spiritual qi. Songwon, however, didn't rush to attempt sensing the spiritual qi. He was earnestly listening to Ji Yin's explanations. Grinding an axe doesn't waste time for the woodcutter. He still understood. Moreover, he was certain in his heart that sensing the spiritual qi and successfully drawing in qi would be a time-consuming task, not achievable in a short period. Soon, 2 hours passed in the morning. Ji Yin stood up and proclaimed loudly, "Today's teaching on the technique ends here. You need to memorize and comprehend. I look forward to someone quickly sensing the presence of the spiritual qi and successfully drawing in qi. For the next month, I will allocate an hour every day to teach you the technique. During this month, you are forbidden from leaving this mansion, but you may move freely within it. Your daily meals will be delivered, and your task is to diligently cultivate the longevity technique. Don't let down my expectations with you." With that, Ji Yin left the wing area. At this moment, Tian Sha Gang's guards approached, distributing a small booklet to each person. It recorded the first layer of the cultivation technique, longevity technique, focusing on qi cultivation. The apprentices were all unsatisfied. Some immediately returned to their respective rooms, eager to begin cultivation. Some gathered in small groups to discuss their understandings of the technique. However, Songwon didn't join in the discussions or cultivation. He felt Ji Yin was too solicitous. No kindness is without ulterior motives. He always felt that behind this lay some undisclosed secrets. Ji Yin must have some hidden agenda. After Ji Yin left, the guards also departed from the mansion. Songwon took the opportunity to observe the entire compound. The mansion occupied an extremely large area built against the mountain. The wing area where he was located was only a small part of the entire compound. Behind the wing area was a large open space with scattered vegetation and ponds further back. At the foot of the mountain was a 2-story building. Songwon guessed that it was where Ji Yin resided, and indeed, Ji Yin had just walked towards that building. Around the building were plots of land, many of which were planted with medicinal herbs. After spending a quarter of an hour gaining a rough understanding of the layout of the courtyard, Songwon returned to his room. On the table in the room, lunch had already been set out, 3 white steamed buns and a plate of stir-fried vegetables with a small amount of meat mixed in. This was considered a sumptuous meal in Qian. Ordinary households wouldn't be able to afford steamed buns or meat every meal. The better the treatment, the more uneasy Songwon felt. He always sensed a huge conspiracy looming over himself and the other young people. After finishing lunch, Songwon took out the booklet. The content of the first layer of cultivation technique, longevity technique, was concise. Consisting of just over 100 words, however, the content was extremely obscure and difficult to understand. If it weren't for Ji Yin's explanations, Songwon felt that understanding the meaning by himself would likely take a long time. It took Songwon nearly half an hour to barely memorize the more than 100 words of complex and convoluted text. Afterwards, he began cross-legged meditation, focusing his mind towards heaven, silently reciting the technique's content while attempting to sense the spiritual chi of heaven and earth. The time spent cultivating passed quickly. In the blink of an eye, 2 to 3 hours had passed, yet Songwon had completely failed to sense the presence of the spiritual chi of heaven and earth. Could it be that I lack talent for cultivation? Or is my talent extremely poor? The afternoon's cultivation yielded no progress at all, leading Songwon to doubt himself. During Ji Yin's explanation of the technique, he mentioned that not everyone possessed the innate talent for cultivation. Those with such talent were exceedingly rare. And even among those with potential, the level of talent varied greatly. It seemed Ji Yin's understanding of cultivation talent was extremely limited. He vaguely touched upon the topic but didn't delve deeply into it. Feeling somewhat disheartened, Songwon opened the door to his room. It was now late afternoon. The setting sun cast a golden hue across the sky, creating a beautiful and enchanting scene. Due to the crisis he felt he was in, Songwon had no interest in admiring the beauty of the sunset. He stepped out of his room and saw many young people gathered in the courtyard, discussing their progress in cultivation. Curious, he approached to eavesdrop and circled around. From what he gathered, not a single person among the 100 or so had sensed the spiritual chi of heaven and earth. Instantly, his hanging heart found a bit of stability. It seems that cultivating immortality isn't as easy as imagined. After dinner, Songwon resumed his cultivation, continuing until late into the night with no progress. Disappointed, he reluctantly lay down to sleep. The next day, early morning, Ji Yin appeared promptly outside the wing. Did anyone sense the existence of spiritual chi yesterday? After a moment, seeing no response from the young people, Ji Yin didn't show disappointment. He continued tirelessly to explain the key points of the longevity technique. Time passed quickly, and it was already the third day of cultivation. That evening, while cultivating the longevity technique, Songwon finally sensed the presence of spiritual chi of heaven and earth. Countless shining lights flickered around his body, drifting aimlessly. As the night deepened, feeling somewhat tired, Songwon suddenly felt a surge of energy and excitement. He had finally completed the first step of cultivation. This meant he possessed the talent for cultivation and had the opportunity to become an enviable immortal. Having calmed his thoughts, Songwon quickly regained composure. He continued to cultivate the longevity technique, hoping to gather chi into his body in one fell swoop. However, no matter how hard he tried, those drifting lights remained beyond his control, refusing to enter his body. After attempting for about a quarter of an hour, he suddenly realized, no, I can't draw chi into my body too quickly, at least not first, until I understand why Ji Yin wants to impart this immortal technique. I cannot expose the fact that I possess the talent for cultivation. The next day, at the hour of the dragon around 7 to 9 a.m., Songwon gathered outside the wing with the other young people. Ji Yin systematically inquired, did anyone succeed in sensing the existence of spiritual chi yesterday? End of the chapter. Chapter 5. Did anyone succeed in sensing the existence of spiritual chi yesterday? After a moment, Ji Yin disappointedly withdrew his gaze. It's been 3 days, and still not a single person has successfully sensed the presence of spiritual chi. Seeing that no one reacted, Songwon didn't actively reveal his own perception of the spiritual chi. It seems my cultivation talent is pretty good, at least stronger than these 100 or so people before me. Songwon thought to himself silently. That evening, Songwon successfully drew the first strand of spiritual chi of heaven and earth into his body. He sensed the bright spots in the air surging into his body in an instant. A faint warmth appeared in his meridians. Following the route of the longevity method within his body, Songwon's eyes brightened. Just as he was about to redouble his efforts, an unsettling thought crossed his mind. What if Ji Yin can sense others' progress? If he finds out that I've successfully drawn chi into my body and deliberately conceal it, it might be disastrous for me. With this consideration, Songwon immediately ceased his cultivation. As soon as he stopped cultivating, the spiritual chi of heaven and earth, which had been attracted and flowing towards him, immediately lost its target and began to drift aimlessly in the air again. The strand of spiritual chi that had just entered his body, not having been refined in time, failed to truly merge with Songwen's own spiritual power. After losing the guidance of the longevity method, it slowly dissipated into the air. That was close. It looks like I'll have to pause cultivation for the next few days. I just need to put on a show in front of others. With his mind made up, Songwen lay down and went to sleep in the blink of an eye. For days passed, reaching the 7th day of cultivation. This morning, as soon as Songwen stepped out of his room, he heard someone loudly discussing. A man with dark skin, slender yet strong and somewhat taciturn, was surrounded by a group of young people with envy in their eyes. Nyo, did you really manage to gather chi into your body? Nyo, please guide us and share your experience of gathering chi into the body. Nyo's dark face flushed with embarrassment. Coming from a rural background and not used to social interactions, this was the first time he felt like the center of attention, which excited him but also left him unsure how to respond. Blushing, he didn't know how to react for a moment. What are you all doing? A rough and severe voice suddenly interrupted the discussion. Ji-in stepped into the wing area with an angry expression on his face. Early in the morning. Instead of cultivating properly, why are you making so much noise? Confronted with Ji-yin's reprimand, everyone instantly fell silent, lowering their heads in fear. As Nyo stood at the center of everyone, Ji-yin's gaze naturally fell upon him. Nyo suddenly felt apprehensive. Ji-yin's stern gaze made him extremely uncomfortable, reminiscent of being targeted by wolves and tigers while hunting back in his hometown. Nyo dared not move, only daring to explain in a low voice, report to master. I successfully gathered chi into my body last night, so… What? You've already gathered chi into your body. Ji-yin's expression of rage instantly turned into delight. Stepping forward, he grasped Nyo's wrist, carefully sensing it, and praised him repeatedly. Nyo, you've done well. From today onwards, you are my personal disciple after today's lessons. You will move into my small building where I will personally instruct you. Feeling Ji-yin's appreciation, Nyo's heart surged with excitement and gratitude. He seemed to see a bright future ahead and even stumbled over his words. Thank you, Master Ji-in. Why still call me Master? From now on, address me as Master Zun. Ji-in said warmly. Note, the first use of the word master is like when a servant refers to his master, while the second one is for a teacher or mentor. After encouraging Nyo for a while longer, Ji-in turned to the others. You all should strive as well. As long as you can successfully gather chi into your body, you can also become my disciples and Nyo's younger brothers. Come, Nyo, sit beside me. Let's begin today's lecture. Listening to Ji-yin's uninterrupted teachings ahead, Songwen's mind was dissecting a series of recent events. Firstly, judging from Ji-yin's ecstatic reaction upon learning of Nyo's success in gathering chi. Ji-in clearly didn't know which individuals possessed cultivation talent. Ji-yin's method of gathering over 100 young people to spread his teachings seemed more like casting a wide net to strike lucky. Secondly, Ji-in couldn't remotely sense others' cultivation levels. Physical contact was necessary. Thirdly, Ji-in had just declared Nyo as his personal disciple. From the conversations and reactions of Elder Yin and Go-hang, it was evident that this group of young people wasn't Ji-yin's first batch of disciples. Were there none among the previous groups who successfully gathered chi into their bodies? If so, where did those people go? And where did those who failed go? Without clarifying these questions, Songwen couldn't find peace of mind, feeling as though a sword was hanging over his head, threatening his life at any moment. However, after confirming that Ji-in couldn't remotely probe others' cultivation levels, Songwen could confidently resume his cultivation in the blink of an eye. 20 days passed, and another young man named Zhang Chung successfully gathered chi into his body. This greatly excited Ji-in. To have 2 out of over 100 people show cultivation talent was a stroke of great fortune, far exceeding his expectations. During this period, Songwen had been quietly cultivating. The heat flow within him had grown stronger, and with each advancement in cultivation, his physical fitness, strength, and mental state had greatly improved. In terms of physical fitness and strength, he couldn't test them conveniently, but now he could clearly feel his spirit becoming more vigorous, even feeling his mind becoming sharper and more Intelligent, he had also been observing Ernyo's progress. Ernyo's improvement was visible to the naked eye. A person of simple mind, Ernyo had no intention of hiding his cultivation and often demonstrated his strength in front of others. Yesterday, Songwon witnessed Ernyo lifting a stone weighing over 50 caddies, eliciting admiration and envy from onlookers. TL note: 1 caddy is equivalent to 1.32 pounds or 0.6 kilograms in his heart. Songwon assessed that his own strength should surpass Ernyo's. That meant the force he could exert now definitely exceeded 50 caddies. Moreover, the concerns he had been harboring that Ji-in might do something unfavorable to those capable of cultivating had not materialized. In the evening, after dinner, Songwon strolled along the courtyard walls, a daily ritual now taken for granted by others. No one paid him special attention, however, instead of digesting his meal. Songwon was carefully observing the layout of the courtyard, preparing for any possible escape in the future. The courtyard's walls were over a zhang high, making direct climbing over them difficult. Guards were stationed inside and out, so the chance of escaping over the wall without being noticed was very low. TL, a zhang is equal to 3.3 meters or about 10 feet. After nearly a month of observation, Songwon hadn't come up empty-handed. He found a dog hole about 10 zhang away from the living rooms. The size of the dog hole was large enough for a person to crawl out. Low shrubs and plenty of tall grass grew around it, making the dog hole extremely concealed. Without his careful examination over several days, he might never have discovered it. However, guards were posted near the dog hole. Even if he exited through the dog hole, he would still be within the territory of the Tian Sha gang. To escape through this dog hole, he would need the right timing. End of the chapter. Chapter 6. Outside the wing rooms in the open space, dozens of young people were surrounding Zhongqing and Ernyo, incessantly asking for the secrets of how they managed to gather qi into their bodies. With only 3 days left until the deadline, these people were becoming anxious. They truly didn't want to miss the opportunity to become cultivators and soar to new heights. However, despite Ernyo and Zhongqing generously sharing their experiences, it seemed they couldn't really help these people. Watching the discussions and debates outside the wing rooms, 2 guards near the wall not far away were mocking the group. "These fools, they're nearing their end and still don't realize it," one guard said mockingly. Sigh. "They are a pitiful bunch, only 14 or 15 years old, inexperienced and ignorant of the world's treachery. There's no such thing as a free lunch in this world." Their voices were not loud, but Songwon, hidden behind a large tree that blocked their view, heard every word clearly. His hairs stood on end from their conversation. It was clear that regardless of whether these young people succeeded in gathering qi into their bodies or not, their ultimate fate seemed to be a dead end. Originally, Songwon was only worried that Ji-in might have ulterior motives towards those with cultivation potential. Now, it appeared that those without such potential were not safe either. Upon careful consideration, this reasoning made sense. All these young people had practiced the longevity technique. Although they hadn't succeeded, they knew the principles and techniques of cultivation. Releasing these young people would inevitably lead to the leakage of the longevity technique. Then, there would eventually be someone successful in cultivating qi and becoming an immortal. Naturally, Ji-in would not want to see such a situation arise. This wasn't just about creating unnecessary competitors for himself. An influx of cultivators in Yanqing could threaten Ji-in and Tian Sha gang's position and power in this area, carefully hidden behind the tree. After listening for a while without gaining more information, Songwon quietly retreated, not wanting to disturb the 2 guards who were still idly chatting away. Back in his room, Songwon had to make a decision. Tomorrow, he would have to inform Ji-in about his success in gathering qi into his body. The next day, in the morning, Songwon stood with a group of young people outside the wing rooms waiting for Ji-in's arrival. Unexpectedly, Ji-in was late by half an hour, a rare occurrence. Alongside him were Ernyo and Zhongqing. Ernyo's condition that day was somewhat strange. He walked with a floating step, his spirit was languid, and even his skin seemed a bit loose, as if he had aged 30 years overnight. The energetic youth had turned into a middle-aged man showing signs of decline. His face also exhibited an abnormal flush, resembling a patient who had just recovered from a serious illness and had taken excessive tonic medicine, leading to ineffective replenishment. Why would this problem suddenly appear? Could it be that there was a mistake in cultivation and injury causing depletion of blood and energy? Songwon couldn't understand the sudden changes happening to him. He could only follow the planned strategy and reveal his success in gathering qi to Ji-in. With only 3 days left until the deadline, if he couldn't successfully gather qi into his body, His life might be in danger, however, judging from the current situation, those who successfully gathered qi into their bodies didn't seem to face immediate danger. Songwon took a deep breath and walked towards Ji-in, bowing respectfully. Master Ji-in, I successfully gathered qi into my body last night. A gleam of light burst from Ji-yin's eyes as he grasped Songwen's wrist. Songwen immediately felt a rush of heat flowing through his wrist into his body. This heat flow was connected to the spiritual power he had refined within his body, but it was much more powerful and majestic. Feeling somewhat uneasy, he had been cultivating secretly for over 20 days, so his internal spiritual power was definitely much stronger than those who had just successfully gathered qi into their bodies. He was worried that Ji-in might sense something amiss and investigate his concealment. However, fortunately, Ji-in didn't probe too deeply into Songwen's internal spiritual strength. He merely sensed the presence of spiritual energy within him and promptly withdrew. Songwen had just successfully gathered qi into his body, so the spiritual energy within him was extremely weak. Ji-in was also concerned that if he poured in too much spiritual power, it might crush that weak spiritual energy, causing irreparable damage. Ji-in showed appreciation. You're quite good. What's your name? Songwen. Starting from today, you are my third disciple. Come, sit beside your eldest martial brother and second martial brother. Thank you, master. Songwen sat down next to Zhang Qing. At this moment, both Zhang Qing and Nyo cast friendly glances towards him. Both of them were born in small places, still quite young, and their minds hadn't been tainted by the darker thoughts of society. They displayed great kindness towards the new junior disciple. Half an hour later, Ji-in briefly finished explaining the day's teachings. With the deadline approaching, Ji-in became increasingly perfunctory in his daily teachings. It was a rarity that today, with Songwen successfully achieving qi condensation, he spoke for half an hour. In previous days, he had only spoken for about 15 minutes. He had gradually lost hope for the remaining disciples. Songwen, come with me. Ji-in turned and walked towards a small building at the foot of the mountain, with Songwen, Zhang Cheng, and Nyo quickly following. Behind them, a group of young people cast admiring glances. Eldest martial brother, second martial brother. Please take care of me in the future. Following Ji-in, Songwen greeted Zhang Qing and Nyo quietly. A moment later, the four of them arrived outside the small building. Songwen, you will live in the vacant room on the first floor, cultivate diligently, and if you have any questions, you can ask me at any time. Nyo, come upstairs with me. The first floor was where disciples resided, while the second floor was Ji-yin's cultivation place. Without his permission, disciples were forbidden from going upstairs. Yes, master. The three disciples bowed and replied. Nyo followed Ji-in upstairs. Junior brother, let me show you to your room. Zhang Qing said, thank you, second martial brother. There were only 3 rooms on the first floor. After Nyo and Zhang Qing occupied 2 of them, only the vacant room near the stairs was left. After entering the room, Songwen had many questions. If he wanted to survive and escape successfully, he needed to understand Ji-yin's habits, daily routines, and more. However, now was not the right time to inquire. The wooden structure of the small building had poor soundproofing. Speaking even slightly louder could be heard by Ji-in upstairs. Moreover, Ji-in was a cultivator. His senses far more sensitive than ordinary people. Furthermore, if he directly asked Zhang Cheng, it might raise suspicion. If Zhang Cheng reported this, Songwen's attempt would be futile to learn about Ji-yin's situation. He would have to approach it indirectly. Zhang Cheng wasn't the best person to ask. Nyo was reticent by nature and had followed Ji-in the longest, considering his abnormal condition the previous day. These factors combined made Nyo the best candidate to inquire from. End of the chapter. Chapter 7. Songwen couldn't inquire about Ji-yin's situation directly, but he could ask about the surrounding environment of the small building. Second senior brother, what is planted in the fields outside the small building? Those are spiritual herbs planted by master. It is said that with proper utilization, they can enhance the cultivation of us cultivators. When I arrived just now, I saw a cave at the foot of the mountain with a stone door in front of it. That cave is no ordinary cave, it is master's alchemy cave. Zhang Qing explained one by one to Songwen, and he also reminded him earnestly, the medicinal fields outside, the alchemy cave, and even the second floor, these places are all off limits to us. Without master's permission, you must not trespass. Thank you for your guidance, senior brother. To leave a good impression on his senior brother and possibly convey information to Ji-in who might be listening upstairs, Songwen did not ask further questions. After seeing Zhang Qing off, Songwen immediately began to focus on cultivating. Life in the small building was isolated from the outside world, and Ji-in did not require Song-won and the other two to do any chores. Time passed quickly, and in the blink of an eye, 3 days had passed, marking the end of the first month. On this morning, Song-won got up and was preparing to go to the wing area to start the daily morning exercises. However, senior brother Eun-yo informed him, "Third junior brother, master asked me to tell you, and second senior brother, that's starting from today. There's no need to attend the morning exercises in the wing area anymore." Upon hearing this, Song-won narrowed his eyes and looked into the distance at the wing area. The wing area, which was usually bustling with people, was now empty. Eun-yo noticed Song-won's reaction and explained proactively, "Master has dismissed them. They lack a mortal fate and cannot complete the process of guiding chi into their bodies. Staying here has lost its meaning." A chill ran through Song-won's heart, a cold sensation that pierced through his entire being, causing him to shiver uncontrollably. These young people were probably not just dismissed, they were most likely completely erased, forever disappearing from this world. Song-won forced a smile on his face. "Thank you for letting me know, senior brother, otherwise, I might have made a pointless trip." Although Song-won concealed it well, the thought of more than 10 young people dying like this made him feel nauseous and fearful. He couldn't stay in the small building for another moment. Right now, he wanted to stay as far away from Ji-in as possible and seek a moment of peace in his heart. "The morning air is nice. I'll walk in the courtyard. I'll accompany you. I've been cultivating these days, and I also find it a bit boring." Eun-yo said so, as he had spent most of his time on the second floor these days, and Song-won had no idea what he and Ji-in were doing. Song-won nodded, and the two walked towards the courtyard together. As they walked, Song-won inquired about Eun-yo's family background. Eun-yo didn't suspect anything and quickly revealed his family situation. Eun-yo was born in a remote village with 5 siblings in his family, making a total of 7 mouths to feed. They relied on 2 mu of thin fields and hunting for a living, leading a very impoverished life. As the eldest in the family, he had been following his parents to hunt in the mountains and work in the fields since he was 8 years old. Family poverty meant he originally had no opportunity to learn to read. However, the village private school teacher, seeing his family's hardship, took pity and allowed Eun-yo to audit classes for free, thus giving Eun-yo the chance to learn to read. When the two were sufficiently far from the small building, Song-won changed the subject and asked about cultivation. "Senior brother, you've been cultivating the longest among us 3, so your cultivation should be the highest. How is your cultivation now?" Eun-yo hesitated briefly, but after a moment he spoke up, "I have reached the late stage of chi refining, first layer." Song-won was instantly stunned, looking at Eun-yo in disbelief. He was sure that his talent was definitely stronger than Eun-yo's, but currently he was still some distance away from reaching the mid-stage of the first layer. Yet Eun-yo had already reached the late stage of the first layer. This simply didn't make sense. "How did you progress so quickly?" Eun-yo's expression became somewhat awkward. After looking around cautiously, he whispered, "Master forbade me from telling you, but Master refined a pill called blood chi pill. After taking this pill, my cultivation improved rapidly by a large margin. I only took one, and I advanced from the early stage to the late stage of the first layer." "Blood chi pill?" Song-won murmured almost inaudibly. He instantly recalled Eun-yo's abnormal condition 3 days ago. He asked softly, "After taking the blood chi pill, did you experience any side effects?" "The depletion of blood chi was severe. On the day I took it, I felt like I aged several decades in an instant." Eun-yo replied truthfully. After pausing for a moment, he continued, "However, Master gave me a lot of tonic medicine these days, and now I feel that my body has recovered. Master's methods are really powerful, actually capable of rapidly advancing our cultivation. Master said that as long as I can reach the second layer of chi refining, he will appoint me as the hall master of the Tian Sha gang, and I will receive a monthly salary of several hundred taels of silver, enough to improve my family's living conditions." As Eun-yo spoke, his face was full of respect for Ji-in and longing for the future. However, Song-won felt a chill in his heart. He kept scrutinizing Eun-yo. Externally, there was indeed no sign of the illness from 3 days ago. But Song-won was not a doctor and couldn't discern any internal problems in Eun-yo. However, because Song-won had been wary of Ji-in all along, he felt things were probably not so simple. If the blood chi pill had no other side effects, why would Ji-in generously provide it to others instead of using it himself? A sudden thought flashed through Song-won's mind. He instantly understood why Ji-in went to such lengths to recruit disciples. Ji-in is most likely using us as guinea pigs for testing medicines. Perhaps all those disciples he previously recruited died from excessive testing of medicines, or their value was eliminated by Ji-in. This could explain why Ji-in constantly recruited disciples and why all his previous disciples disappeared without a trace, as well as the fear of the Tian Sha gang members toward Ji-in recruiting disciples. A sense of crisis arose in Song-Wen's heart. Ernyo started experimenting 20 days after successfully guiding Qi into his body. Looking at it this way, Song-Wen didn't have much time left. He could only hope that Ernyo and Zhang Cheng ahead could hold on for a while longer, giving him a chance to escape. After returning to the small building, Song-Wen decided not to wait any longer. He had to take the initiative. He needed to figure out Ji Yin's daily schedule and prepare to escape. After observing for these 3 days, Ji-in spent almost all his time on the second floor. Song-Wen had no idea what exactly he was doing, whether Ji-in needed to sleep during the day, and when he slept, Song-Wen stood at the staircase leading to the second floor, steadied his mind, and took a step forward. End of the chapter. Chapter 8. Master, are you inside? Disciple has some cultivation doubts and would like to seek guidance. As Song-Wen spoke, he used the higher elevation of the second floor to observe his surroundings. The small building was built against the mountain, with a sheer cliff several zhang high to the west, completely bare without any vegetation, making it extremely difficult to climb. Above the cliff was a mountain towering over 10 zhang high, densely covered with vegetation. Its terrain steep and difficult to traverse. TL note: a zhang is 10 feet and 3.3 meters high. On the other 3 sides, there were walls over a zhang high, guarded by sentries. Even beyond these walls was still within the territory of the Tian Sha gang, with many disciples of the gang coming and going. Trying to escape through the other 3 sides was far from easy. Currently, the only escape route was to climb over the mountain and flee from the Tian Sha gang. Ji Yin's deep voice suddenly came, interrupting Song-Wen's observation. Come in. Song-Wen pushed open the door and saw Ji-in sitting cross-legged on a mat, holding a book and flipping through its pages. Song-Wen dared not look around casually. He walked straight to the opposite side of Ji-in and bowed. Disciple pays respects to master. Ji nodded. Please sit. After Song-Wen sat cross-legged, Ji-in continued, what problems do you have in cultivation? Just ask. Master, recently I've noticed that my cultivation progress has been slow. I would like to ask Master for any solutions. Where do you encounter difficulties in your cultivation practice? After the spiritual energy enters the meridians and returns to the dantian, only a small part can be successfully refined, while most of it cannot be retained. This problem was not something Song-Wen made up, it was his genuine feeling during cultivation. Instead of giving a direct answer, Ji-in asked, how do you understand entering the muddy pellet and descending to the acupoint? Disciple thinks. After a quarter of an hour under Ji Yin's explanation, Song-Wen realized his misconceptions in cultivation. As he was about to bid farewell and stood up, his eyes began to size up the book in Ji Yin's hands. Since he was sitting opposite Ji Yin, he just managed to see the name of the book, Comprehensive Guide to Low-Level Spirit Herb Cultivation. The book seemed somewhat incomplete, with only a few dozen pages. Ji Yin also noticed Song-Wen's gaze. He said, interested in this book? Song-Wen was suddenly alarmed, afraid that Ji-in would suspect he was intentionally prying. However, Ji-in didn't think in that direction at all. He casually said, if you want to read it, I'll let you take a look. As he spoke, Ji-in handed the book over. Song-Wen took the book and saw that the first thing he saw was an introduction and cultivation points for a spirit herb called blood vine, red blood vine, along with a drawing of the red blood vine. Red blood vine is a vine plant preferring warm temperatures, light, drought-resistant, averse to water and cold. A moment later, Ji-in asked, what do you think about planting red blood vine? Song-Wen had previously worked in a traditional Chinese medicine company and had some understanding of Chinese medicine cultivation. Combining his past knowledge, he replied, disciple believes that for planting red blood vine, it should be done on a sunny slope, away from water sources. The soil should be loose, preferably sandy, and good drainage is necessary, especially after rain. In our Yancheng, the winters are cold, so during winter it needs insulation. Song-Wen deliberately made his answer seem valuable. If he could demonstrate some special value, perhaps Ji-in wouldn't subject him to drug testing. Upon hearing Song-Wen's reply, Ji-Yin's eyes flashed with satisfaction, nodding slightly. I didn't expect your cultivation aptitude to be average, but you show some talent in spirit herb cultivation. Ji-in was also pondering. He had been stuck at the 3rd layer of qi refinement for several years, unable to break through. The first 3 layers of qi refinement were considered early stage, where cultivators didn't differ much from ordinary people. It was only from the 4th layer onwards that the difference between immortals and mortals began to manifest. Ji-in possessed two techniques that required cultivation to at least the mid-stage of qi refinement. Moreover, what was most important was, based on Ji-in's information, longevity technique cultivated spiritual power, although it lacked elemental attributes and was not suited for combat. However, many cultivators, especially those with poor aptitude and wandering cultivators, practiced it. One reason was the widespread dissemination of the longevity technique, making it easily accessible. Secondly, the longevity technique had an enticing feature extending lifespan. It was said that a wandering cultivator who practiced the longevity technique reached the 9th layer of qi refinement and lived to be 180 years old, considering that the lifespan of an ordinary person did not exceed 100 years. And during the qi refining stage, the physical body had not yet transcended the realm of mortals. The general maximum lifespan would not exceed 120 years. This person lived to be 180 years old, extending his lifespan by a third, just a decade less than foundation building stage. Cultivators. This made many cultivators who felt hopeless about foundation building aspire to it. According to past experiences, the first 3 layers of the longevity technique did not have the function of extending lifespan. From the 4th layer onwards, its longevity function gradually manifested. This made Ji-in even more eager to break through the bottleneck of early qi refinement. He believed that once he broke through to the 4th layer of qi refinement, he should be able to advance to the 6th layer within his lifetime. At that time, even aspiring to the late stage of qi refinement would not be impossible. The blood qi pill was a type of medicine that stimulated human potential and helped cultivators break through bottlenecks. It was commonly used by qi refining stage wandering cultivators with poor aptitude. After spending 2 years, Ji-in finally managed to barely refine the blood qi pill by his own trial and error. However, he dared not take it lightly. As a mere small pharmacist, he once went up the mountain to collect herbs and accidentally discovered the cave of a deceased wandering cultivator. There, he obtained inheritances such as cultivation techniques, basic talisman crafting, the formula for blood qi pill, spirit herb cultivation, etc., and inadvertently began his cultivation career. Throughout his entire cultivation journey, he had never encountered other cultivators and relied solely on his own exploration. The blood qi pill he refined looked quite different from the description in the formula, so Ji-in was cautious and did not dare to take it himself. Therefore, he thought of finding someone to test it. As expected, after a year of testing, he inadvertently killed 7 disciples. All these young people had severe qi and blood deficiencies after taking the blood qi pill, and various organs in their bodies aged to different extents, leading to their deaths within a few days. Under his continuous improvements, Ernyo was the first person to take the blood qi pill without adverse effects. This gave him hope of success. In the past, cultivating spirit herbs and refining pills had always been done by Ji-in alone, leading to his daily chores being quite busy. Just now, Songwen's performance made him think about training Songwen specifically in the cultivation of spirit herbs. With the success of Ernyo, Ji-in felt that the successful refinement of the blood qi pill was within reach. At this critical time, Ji-in did not want to expend too much energy on cultivating spirit herbs. End of the chapter. Chapter 9. After a brief contemplation, Ji-in pulled out a small booklet from his robe and tossed it to Songwen. This is a summary of my own experience in cultivating spiritual herbs. Take it back and read it carefully. Starting today, you'll be in charge of the Eastern spiritual field. If you can manage it well, in half a month, the entire field will be entrusted to you, and at that time I will grant you a great opportunity. In the Western spiritual field, Red Arrow and Yuanwan were planted, auxiliary herbs for refining qi and blood pills easily found in the deep mountains of Yenqing, not considered rare. Handing over the trial to Songwen, Ji-in was also relieved. As for the promised opportunity by Ji-in, it was just a form of persuasion in his view. Allowing Songwen to live 2 more years was already a great favor. Thank you, Master. Disciple will do his utmost to cultivate and not disappoint Master's expectations. Songwen respectfully replied, accepting the booklet. Leaving the 2nd floor with 2 books, he took charge of the spiritual herb cultivation. For a moment, he couldn't decide if it was an opportunity or not. Let's work hard to cultivate the spiritual herbs. Perhaps this will delay the time for my own trials. Songwen silently resolved in his heart. Back in his room, Songwen first read Ji-in's notes on planting experiences. Ji-in had only cultivated 8 types of spiritual herbs, all needed for refining qi and blood pills. Then, he flipped through detailed explanation of low-level spiritual herb cultivation, identified all 8 types of herbs Ji-in had planted, and silently pondered the methods of cultivating spiritual herbs, with a certain theoretical foundation in mind. Song Wen went to the eastern medicinal field. This field wasn't large, about half an acre. Jiin had taken good care of the spiritual field, with neat rows and sparsely planted 30 plants each of red arrow and Yuanwan. Song Wen carefully inspected the field, pulling out some weeds along the way. He examined each spiritual herb, numbered them, recorded their growth and watering conditions in detail. 10 days later, Jiin, who had been observing all this, entrusted the entire medicinal field to Song Wen. Jiin himself went into seclusion once again to refine qi and blood pills. After repeatedly instructing Song Wen to take care of the red blood vine, Jiin entered the pill refining cave and closed the stone door. Red blood vine was the main ingredient for refining qi and blood pills and the hardest to find spiritual herb initially. He had used the power of the Tiansha gang to search through most of Qian country, just to find this 10-year-old red blood vine. Each time he refined medicine, he dared only take a few branches, fearing it would affect the growth of the red blood vine. From Nyo's mouth, Song Wen learned that every time Jiin went into seclusion for pill refining, it took more than 10 days. Song Wen's heart became excited. Feeling that the opportunity to escape was imminent, calmly, Song Wen walked into a small wooden house in the medicinal field. Here were the tools needed for planting spiritual herbs. Song Wen searched through the wooden house, looking for some tools that could help him escape. After searching around, besides the usual tools, Song Wen found nothing useful. However, he did find a 20-centimeter long dagger. The dagger had a leather scabbard. Removing the scabbard, the dagger appeared jet black, the blade emitting a sharp cold light. Intimidating. A sharp blade! Song Wen silently exclaimed. He gripped the hilt tightly and slashed at a piece of wood in the house. Instantly, the thick stick snapped. Song Wen's eyes gleamed brightly. This dagger was definitely a high-quality weapon, a perfect self-defense tool for escaping danger. Song Wen sheathed the dagger, placing it in his boot. After another quick search through the wooden house, finding nothing else, Song Wen walked out with a hoe. While working in the spiritual field, Song Wen occasionally glanced at the alchemy cave and the cliffs to the west. The lowest point of the cliff was 5 zhang tall, with some areas exceeding 10 zhang. It was bare, devoid of any trees or weeds, but moist moss grew in abundance. However, the excessive moss made climbing difficult. Song Wen considered using tools to climb the mountain, but he couldn't find any suitable ropes in the entire courtyard. If he were to chop wood and build a ladder, it would be challenging to avoid the attention of guards and Nyo's group. Should I cooperate with Nyo and Zhang Cheng? But I'm not sure what they're thinking, given their respect for Jiin. I'm afraid it'll be difficult to persuade them. It might even expose myself. After waiting so long for Jiin to go into seclusion, finally having the chance to escape, Song Wen was now trapped by the terrain, unable to flee. His inner turmoil grew impatient. The hoe in his hand slipped, failing to dig out the weeds and nearly damaging a spiritual herb. Song Wen woke up, realizing his actions today were a bit reckless. Those who accomplish great things must have enough patience. After calming his mind, Song Wen began to seriously tend to the spiritual field. That night Song Wen tossed and turned in bed, unable to sleep. He got up quietly, opened the door and stepped outside. The moon and stars were sparse. With silence all around, Song Wen stared at the cliffs in contemplation. Unexpectedly, this 5 zhang high cliff had become his barrier to escape. In a daze, Song Wen saw flickering lights on the mountaintop. Are there people on the mountain? Song Wen was suspicious, squinting to see that indeed, there were intermittent lights on the mountaintop. Could there be Tiansha gang guards stationed on the mountaintop? Song Wen seemed to have discovered another piece of unfavorable information. Upon closer thought, there should logically be Tiansha gang guards on the mountaintop. Tiansha gang had fortified the entire area, even constructing a rudimentary version of city walls around the perimeter and stationed heavy guards. There was no reason for them not to be vigilant over this mountain. Setting up a lookout post on the mountaintop also facilitated monitoring of movements in Yanqing in case a large army besieged Tiansha gang. It would provide timely information and serve as an escape route for Tiansha gang. Thinking of this, Song Wen completely dismissed his plan to escape from the rear mountain. With his current strength just slightly above normal, it was absolutely impossible for him to break through the blockade of the well-trained gang members of Tiansha gang, not to mention the many martial arts experts among them. Feeling somewhat disheartened, Song Wen returned to his room. He no longer tried to sleep but began to cultivate. Only by accumulating enough strength would he have a chance to escape from Tian Sha Gang in the blink of an eye. Another 10 days passed with Song Wen's relentless efforts day and night. His cultivation quietly reached the middle stage of the first layer of Qi cultivation on this day. While Song Wen was laboring in the medicinal field, he suddenly saw the stone door of the alchemy cave open, and Ji-in walked out triumphantly. Song Wen's face changed slightly, filled with unease. It seems a new round of testing is about to begin. I just don't know who will be selected this time, or if I will be summoned for the pill testing. End of the chapter. Chapter 10. Upon emerging from seclusion, Ji-in first came to inspect the spiritual field. He was quite satisfied with the growth of the spiritual herbs. Not bad. Keep up the good work. After hypocritically encouraging Song Wen with a couple of sentences, he left the spiritual field. He had more important matters to attend to now. This time, his alchemy process went extremely smoothly, breaking new ground by refining 2 pills in 1 furnace. This meant that his alchemy skills had greatly improved. With this success, he was full of confidence in his production of the blood qi pill this time. He felt certain that this time he had truly refined the blood qi pill. Nyo Zhang. Chang. Both of you come up to the 2nd floor with me. I have prepared something good for you. Ji-in shouted loudly, and without waiting for Nyo and Zhang Cheng's reaction, he went upstairs on his own. Zhang Cheng eagerly opened the door and hurried up to the 2nd floor. Master had been in closed-door alchemy for so long, and summoning him immediately upon emerging must mean he wanted him to take the pill to enhance his strength. Master had promised that as long as he advanced to the 2nd stage of qi cultivation, he would grant him leave to visit his family. By then, not only could he walk outside with the status of a core member of Tian Sha Gang, but he would also receive a considerable amount of silver each month. Thinking of this, Zhang Cheng's steps quickened involuntarily, rushing eagerly towards the 2nd floor. With a slightly slower movement, Nyo, after opening the door, hesitated. The memories of his struggle after taking the pill last time were still fresh in his mind, although his strength had greatly improved after taking the pill. It had almost cost him his life if Master hadn't provided him with a large amount of replenishing medicine. Nyo even doubted whether he could survive for 3 days. He had never imagined that less than a month later, he would have to take the blood qi pill. Again, he really didn't want to eat it again. Although aware of the side effects of the blood qi pill, Nyo, being honest, did not think too much. In his simple heart, he never imagined that Master, whom he regarded as a second parent, would do anything to harm his life. In the end, Nyo still stepped up to the 2nd floor. Come, these are the pills I refined for you. After taking them, your cultivation will greatly advance. Take the pills in my room, and after swallowing them, immediately start circulating and refining the medicinal power. I will be on the side to protect you. Thank you, Master. Excited, Zhang Cheng expressed gratitude and immediately swallowed the pill. After hesitating for a moment, Nyo, ultimately lacking the courage to question Ji-in, also swallowed the pill. A moment later, after taking the pill, both of them began to emit wisps of mist from their heads, their faces showing painful expressions. Hold on, continue circulating and refining. Interrupting now will waste all your efforts. Not only will it fail to enhance your strength, but it might also cause your cultivation to regress. Ji-in sternly admonished from the side. Upon hearing this, both gritted their teeth and persisted. The body temperature of both began to rise sharply, and their skin gradually turned red, resembling boiled river shrimp. Seeing their reactions, Ji-in suddenly felt uneasy. Nyo suddenly let out a piercing scream of agony, then collapsed backward, his body convulsing uncontrollably as if triggering a chain reaction. Zhang Cheng followed suit, falling unconscious. How could this happen? Ji-in's face showed panic and unwillingness. He could feel the surging spiritual energy and rapidly depleting blood qi from the two. Indeed, their cultivation had greatly improved, but just like with previous medicines, it still involved rapidly consuming their blood qi, and now the speed of blood qi consumption was even more severe. Although Nyo and Zhang Cheng had collapsed unconscious, the effects of the medicine were still active. Their life essence continued to be rapidly consumed, transforming into spiritual energy. However, since they were not circulating it, this spiritual energy began to escape uncontrollably into the surroundings, gradually increasing the concentration of spiritual energy in the room. With the continuous depletion of their essence and blood, the visible weakening of their bodies became evident. Their skin gradually loosened, covered with wrinkles. Nyo, who was trying the medicine for the 2nd time, even developed age spots on his body. There Breaths also weakened gradually, visibly nearing the end of their lives. Ji Yin's expression became extremely ugly. He had failed once again, losing 2 test subjects at once. I should have only had one person try the medicine just now. Ji Yin regretted inwardly. After a moment, Ji Yin gathered his thoughts, his eyes becoming fierce. It seems next time I can only let the kid outside try the medicine. I planned to let him live a bit longer, but fate did not comply with my wishes. Selecting a new test subject must now be prioritized. If another shortage of test subjects delays me like last time, it will be troublesome. Jean opened the door and walked out, not bothering to look back at the 2 still faintly struggling on the ground. Meanwhile, on the first floor, Songwon was observing the situation. His eyes coincidentally met Ji Yin's as he stepped out of the room. Songwon suddenly felt like he was being stared down by a fierce beast, as if he could be devoured at any moment. With a heart full of fear, Songwen's face remained indifferent as he turned away from Ji Yin, no longer paying attention to him and focused earnestly on working in the spiritual field throughout the day. Songwen kept an eye on the movements on the second floor. He hoped to see Nyo and Zhang Chang safely descend from upstairs. However, he waited for a long time, but there was no movement upstairs. As evening approached, 2 Tiansha gang members ascended to the second floor, each carrying a large burlap sack, then left the courtyard. Songwon was already certain in his heart that Nyo and Zhang Chang were no longer alive, and the next test subject would likely be himself. That night, Songwon suffered from insomnia once again, unable to remember how many times this had happened. The next day, Jean found Songwon and informed him that he would once again enter seclusion, instructing Songwon to take good care of the spiritual field. After respectfully seeing Jean off, Songwon's heart was both excited and nervous. He understood that the next 10 days, during Ji Yin's alchemy, would be his final chance to escape. He absolutely could not afford to sit idly and wait for death. Determined to escape from the back mountain tonight, Songwon immediately stopped thinking about tending to the spiritual field. He found a sturdy hoe in the tool shed and identified 4 small trees in a spot far from the perimeter wall. His plan was to fell these 4 trees after nightfall, tie them together with ropes, and construct a ladder to climb the cliff with only himself in the courtyard and guards stationed on the periphery. As long as he was cautious while chopping wood, it should not attract the guards' attention. Moreover, with his current cultivation at the mid-stage of the first layer, both his strength and agility had greatly improved. There was still a considerable chance of escaping. End of the chapter.